All right, good afternoon. Let's get started with accounts receivable researching payments. So today's agenda we're going to have is we're going through posted payments, advances, handling overpayments, correcting payments, and correcting advances. So we won't be going through how we receive these payments, but instead how we're going to use these different areas to either research payments we've received or what to do if we have to correct a payment that's been made to us. In Intacct, there's two types of payments that we're going to collect, or two methods that how we're going to receive a payment. One is a posted payment, and the other is an advance. A posted payment is what we'll primarily use because this is the method we use when receiving a payment to apply to open invoices. We use the posted payments to record partial payments, full payments, or overpayments. And we do that either by using the receive payments new method, or we can pay our order entry transactions right at the order entry invoice screen. We also have the advance method that we can use. This is what we use when a person has given us money and there are no open invoices. We haven't sent them a bill, or all their past bills are paid off, but they've given us money and there's no current invoice open for them to have their payment applied to. So we don't apply those payments on receipt. We use the advance method, which stores it in an advance account that we can use to apply later. So a little bit different. And also, if we're receiving money from a person who doesn't currently owe us money, that should raise a flag with us that there's something else that we probably need to do to address why that's happening. But this is what we're looking at today, is posted payments and advances. So when we talk about posted payments, particularly the receive payments new method, that's the method we use to record full payments, partial payments, or overpayments made by a customer for specific invoices. We're billing them and they're giving us money for that bill, whether it's the full balance, part of it, or more than what's due. In Intacct, the system, when we go to receive a payment from a person, is only going to list invoices that can have action taken against them. Fully paid invoices are not listed. So if we go into Intacct, we go to receive a payment, and if I have a customer that's paid, Tess McTesterson gave us money. One, we can see the customer has a zero balance, so that's a likely indicator that there's no open invoice. And then when I go to select invoices, there is nothing to receive from them. So we wouldn't be able to use this method to receive a payment if they've given us money. We can use the receive payments new to apply existing credit memos, apply our overpayments, apply advances to any unpaid invoice. Payments posted through this method are going to be found in the posted payments screen in accounts receivable. And it doesn't matter how we receive the posted payment. We have two ways to receive that: by bank or by undeposited funds. When we're receiving those payments, that's the first thing we choose when we're receiving the payment. Bank meaning we're posting this directly to cash, or undeposited fund meaning there's an undeposited funds account. And we're going to select that, and we're going to aggregate a number of payments to that account first, and then we're going to create a deposit so that all of those different payments will total one amount instead of several different amounts. So we have those two different choices to make when we're collecting that payment. When we use the bank as our option, we're posting to a bank account. We have to choose the right bank account that we're going to post the payment to. And typically, if you're an accounts receivable department, you're receiving this money. If you're in Koya and IT, you have access to multiple bank accounts. So you might have multiple ways to select this. We want to make sure we're selecting the right bank. And that's the same with undeposited funds. There's only one account we can use for undeposited funds. We should use no other account numbers. And regardless of which account type we use for this payment, those payments will post to posted payments when we're done. There's no other area that we need to go to look at depending on what we're using. So I got an email within the last couple of weeks. Someone sent, "Good afternoon, LJ. I'm looking for a check that Benita stated she partially paid back in November. It's check number 22968. I am not finding it in the deposits I have made. Is there another way to find this payment? I know a lot of us, when we're receiving payments, we keep a paper trail of what we've done. That would be pretty hard to figure out going all the way back to November. I got this email in March. So that's 5 months of deposits you're looking through to hope you find this check number. You don't have to use those copies that you've made. You can use Intacct to find that. So we go to accounts receivable, under the payments area, posted payments. So typically, most of us as users are probably going to come to this page and we're going to land on the default view, which says all right underneath posted payments. It says all in that little corner on the left. They're trying to find check number 22968 that they posted in November. It says it was from Benita, so that's our signal to us that we know this is a payment from the finance office. So we might start first by looking for customers that have the name finance in it, right? We'll use the percentage sign to make a wildcard and just type percentage sign finance to bring a list of all the payments we've collected from finance, which is 22 of those. The email said the check was printed on November 11th, 2021, so we'd want to see all the payments after then, of which some of us might get tired of this. That's why I get the email. But if I click to view this November payment, in there is the check number that we posted this to, which is not the check number we're looking for. We're looking for check 22968. And we would have to repeat this a number of times until we can rule out or find the invoice that we paid with that check number. Or we might have paid it to a different customer. So how would we find that? Maybe it's all the payments of the month of November. On this posted payment screen, if we have all the payments, is there anyone here to know how we would limit this to just looking at the month of November? So it's going to work just like in purchasing. We have this advanced filter. And so I might want to look at payment date greater or equal to November 1st, 2021. Payment date is less or equal to November 30th, 2021. And if we apply that filter, all these other payments can go away. And now we just have 30 payments for November we can dig through. Still not really feasible if we're just looking for one check number, right? On the posted payment screen, you can create a custom view. So we're going to create a new view. One of the options for us is to include the document check number on the screen. So we could select that, save this view and give it a name, and then search by the check number. So I've already made one, so I'm going to cancel this, and we're going to switch the view from this to my little training view I did that added the check number. Now these filters don't matter as much. I don't need to look for just finance or look for the month of November. I put that right here in the middle of the screen. Here's the check numbers. We're looking for check number 22968. Nothing come up with it. Maybe we're going to add that wildcard symbol before the number just in case. Still nothing. So when this person sent me that email, this is what I did. So I got to respond to this person that they haven't recorded this check as a payment. So now they can contact Benita and let her know that the check that you've written to us in November is not a check that we've applied to any payment in Intacct. Took us a couple of minutes just to do that right here. We don't need to go asking for anyone else or go diving through our paperwork to hope we find it. Now we can work with the program and tell them, hey, this check number is not applied. Can you check your records to see if it's been cashed at the bank? Of which any user of Intacct can access their check register and see if it's in transit or if it's been reconciled. This check wasn't reconciled, it was still in transit, and the program determined that they may have actually shredded the check instead of applying it to one of the invoices. So now the program can go through the process of voiding a check, reissuing a payment. In addition to using posted payments as a way to research your checks, there's something called a receipts register. So everything we're going to be looking at today is under accounts receivable. Under reports, we have registers, receipts register. So if we stick with the same example, we know it started somewhere in November. If we look through today, we've got the finance customer. The email was from IT. So now I've got November 1st through today. Customer is IT, RST Finance Department. Checkbook 52, program is information technology. When I view this receipts register, this is going to give me a list of all payments I've received from finance in that period of time posted to IT's account. That check number is 22968. And that's not any one of these check numbers, which we've already known that by doing posted payments, but this is our other option to have all the payments on screen right here for just finance. So we have two different ways to look at what we're entering when a question comes up about one of our payments. All right, so no questions come in, so let's talk about advances. These are used when you receive a payment from a customer and there's no invoice. And this means we're going to apply the payment to an invoice at a later time, which also means you now have a responsibility as a program user to monitor this balance and apply the payment accordingly. If you receive a payment, you post it into Intacct and you know that there wasn't a payment to apply it to, so you went through the advance step, it's now your responsibility to know that you're carrying that balance until you apply it to an invoice in the future. Intacct doesn't apply it automatically for you. That's the responsibility of you once you make that choice to receive an advance payment. There are times we use an advance payment because someone's going to pay us for something and then we're going to bill them. Solid waste is a frequent user of this. But sometimes they give us money and turns out they're not going to do any more business with us, so now we owe them a refund. That's your responsibility to keep track of that and then to do the necessary steps to make sure we pay them back. When we use advances, the transaction automatically posts to this account number, 21025 AR advances, for the receipt of advances. So if we go to invoices to receive a payment, we bring up Test McTester saying there's no invoice for us to post that payment to. We're going to advances and clicking the plus sign. Almost the exact same steps as receiving a payment. Are we going to post this advance directly to the bank, right to cash? Or is there going to be multiple advance payments that we're going to post to an undeposited funds account first and then make a deposit? So you'll take the appropriate step there. Choose the correct bank account. And then we can choose our customer and start filling in the date the payment is being received and payment day. What is the check number? If there's a memo for why they're paying you without a bill, you might want to include that here so you can refer back to that later. And then we fill in the rest of the stuff down here at the bottom of however much that advance is. So if it was a $100 advance, and then we can post this. Now this automatically posts to that AR advance account. So there's no need to choose a different account. Like if I show details, I took the line out from up top, so we had some users that kept changing the account to a different one. we don't need to change this account. It should always be this one. So when we go later to look at a general ledger report or dimension balance report, it's very easy to find who has outstanding balances through the advance account numbers. Once we receive that payment, if we're researching an advance, where do you think we're going to go look to see where that payment's been posted? One, right there at the advance screen. From here, here's a list of advances that have been received. So if we're searching for Tess McTesterson, quite a few advances from this one. We can also go to posted payments. So we can search for any of these payments under posted payments. And here we can see the accounts, undeposited funds, the advances, and then those check numbers that I copied. So regardless of where we received it, through advances or posted payments, we can search by check number or by customer to find them all under posted payments for one place to see. And then we can also use advances or the receipts register for the same information. So very easy to find and research our payments, which either we're having to do because of a situation like the email I showed you there, where someone's going to be looking for a check because they've noticed a invoice is unpaid. You might reach out to one of your programs and say, you haven't paid for this invoice, and they may respond as Benita did to the IT department. This is the check number we did on this date. Now you have to go find that check. This is how we're going to do that. So pretty much the same steps as looking for posted payment as it is with advances. So when we're receiving payments, there's going to be times when someone pays us more than what the bill says. Could be for a variety of reasons. It could be a typo. So it might be a 5-cent overpayment. Whatever the reason is, when we go to receive a payment from one of our customers, so this particular one, there's a payment due from this customer for $177,000. If the payment finally comes in and it's for more than the $177,000, we're still going to receive that under receive a payment. Below the area where we select the invoices where we're paying is an area that says overpayment dimensions. Right now it's grayed out because there isn't an overpayment. So if I was going to receive, and we put in the amount due, $177,984, this still says grayed out. There's no amount overpaid. But if for some reason they sent to us $180,000, so that's the amount we're entering. What happens now is here is telling us what we can apply, and then what is left available or overpaid. Down here now goes from gray to white because now we can enter information about where we want that overpayment to be placed. And just like the advances, it has its own separate account number where the overpayments are stored. When we receive this payment of $180,000, even though there's going to be an amount that can't be applied, the full $180,000 is still what we're going to search for at posted payments or the receipts register. What becomes a responsibility of the program is now that we know we have an overpayment, just like an advance, we now have to start keeping track of this to say, what are we doing with this extra $2,000? Are we anticipating another invoice to come in? In this case, I'm using a funding agency. So if this was an overpayment from the funding agency, we might have a refund that we're going to have to do because we do have restrictions on our federal funds that we have to spend the money in a certain amount of time. So we might be refunding this to the funding agency. Or if you have a customer who paid you too much because they had a typo in their documentation and sent a check for the wrong amount, you might have to pay them more. So we have a question on, will this show an underpayment? So if $160,000 came in for this, and we update this amount here to say $160,000, it's still going to tell us there's an outstanding amount. And on the posted payment screen, instead of the status being fully applied, it's going to say partially paid. So we would know we can still apply a payment. If we applied this payment and we come back here to see the invoice, it'll have the original amount that was due, but then the current amount that's now left, which is the $17,000. So yes, we would still know that someone did not fully pay for one of their invoices. And we see that most commonly, I think, in the child care department is where they receive, in solid waste, where we receive a lot of payments that are for less than what's due. So occasionally, we'll have a circumstance where we've gotten advance from somebody or an overpayment, and that now results in having to refund this person. Which also means I get an email like this. Can you provide the correct process to refund a customer for solid waste? So regardless of the reason that we're refunding somebody, whether it was an overpayment or an advance that's not going to be applied to another invoice, this is what we're going to do every single time. We're going to create a debit memo adjustment that can be used to apply the overpayment or advance balance to. So a debit adjustment, because when we're in our receivables department, that customer is going to have a credit balance instead of a debit balance. And that's that credit we're trying to now set to $0. Because we still don't want an invoice or a payment out there that's going to be sit out there in perpetuity that we can't do anything about. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our adjustment screen and start creating that adjustment. So we'll have our customer, or we're going to make that a debit memo because we want to offset the credit that's been generated from the overpayment. The reference number here is the invoice that was overpaid. So in this case, that one was draw that number. And we might have our description. Something that's clear to everyone else who's going to see that later on down the road. And the moment you know what that's about, which is great, but there are going to be other people who are going to see this. Whether it's someone, a program monitor, one of the accountants here, one of the auditors, someone's going to see this and they're going to know why you're doing this. Make sure there's a good description that tells everybody else why you're doing that. We can attach attachments here. If we're going to create a debit adjustment to reduce that overpayment, that credit balance down to $0, one of our attachments might be like an AR ledger or a general ledger report that shows that this customer does in fact have a credit for the amount we're about to offset. In this case, the amount I included was roughly $20,000 more than what was due. So we're going to refund $20,000, or we're going to set this up to make it look like that's what we're trying to do. We're going to include that ledger report that shows they have a credit balance. So now when someone later goes to see what that is, here's the brief description of what it is, and here's the proof that it actually existed at this time. Now we're ready to prepare the line items for our adjustment. The account number it's asking for is the revenue account number we use when processing our accounts receivable. This is from a drawdown for a federal grant. So that's the revenue account number I'm going to use here. If you're at TUC, we're at childcare, you're at solid waste, you're going to use the appropriate account number for your revenue. AR account. it can be one of two accounts. If this has to do with solid waste or travel, you will use account number 13,000 for solid waste or travel. If this is for anything else, TUC, childcare, solid waste, insurance, we are going to use account number 12,500. For this adjustment, because we're dealing with an overpayment balance or an advance balance, this adjustment's probably not going to have an item used on those things, so we can leave that blank. What is the amount? Well, in this case, it was an overpayment of $20,000. Where did we receive that overpayment to? We want to use the same stuff we used for the overpayment, and then we can post this. So what's going to happen here is it's a debit memo. It's going to debit this accounts receivable account. And what that means is the credit balance of $20,000 is now going to have a debit of $20,000 placed on it. It's going to offset that account so the balance becomes zero. It now puts a credit balance of $20,000 on this revenue account number we're using. Because when we're done with this adjustment, and then we use that overpayment to pay off this adjustment. So now the overpayment's gone off the books. Our adjustment's clear, not going to show on an aging report. This revenue account is going to have a $20,000 credit balance. We owe this person money. So now we can go to our balance sheet requisition to pay the customer, who should now be a vendor, $20,000 out of this account number of the program funding source checkbook using this account. The purchasing transaction debits $20,000 onto this account number, setting that balance to zero so we don't over-report revenue. Someone did comment about the drawdowns, which is the drawdowns we do for federal grants or state grants. Yep. The program monitors use this exact same process as any other program that's billing for like solid waste, childcare, insurance, drug testing. IT uses this for their sales. KINI and Koya use this for advertising sales. So TED Loans also uses this. So if you can use it here, you can use it pretty much almost any other program. This skill transfers from many of these different jobs. So we know how to refund. We know how to look for these payments. There's going to be times when we actually have to correct the payment. Sometimes checks get returned by the bank either because they had insufficient funds or a check was expired. That's, I think, the most recent question I had was for someone correcting a payment they've applied was they waited more than 6 months to deposit a check, tried to deposit it to the bank, and the bank denied it. Maybe we applied the check to the wrong invoice or customer. We had a typo and had the incorrect amount. We received it to the wrong day. Or maybe we recorded the wrong check number. So like in the example where we had that check 22968, maybe we accidentally typed 22698. We've seen that in our research, and now we just want that to be correct, so we want to make an adjustment to that. Depending on the time that's passed, we can do that. Number one, though, we cannot edit a posted payment. So any payments you've applied, we cannot go back later, edit it, and change that check number to be the correct one. Intacct's pretty strict with things that affect cash. So once we've posted it, that's it. We can't say it was one check one day and then a week later change the check number. It's going to be whatever you've typed in. That means any change or correction that we have to make has to start with reversing the posted payment. Once we reverse the payment, we can go through the steps of receiving the payment again and then using the correct information. If we receive the payment as part of a deposit, we actually have to reverse a deposit first, and then we can reverse the payment. And this is important, particularly for program monitors or finance employees. Journal entries don't fix any of these things. It's not going to fix an overpayment balance. It doesn't fix an advance, an adjustment, an invoice, AR activity, an incorrect check number, an incorrect amount. A journal entry does nothing to that. If we have an overpayment and we do a journal entry, because we think that's what's going to correct that credit balance that's sitting there, that overpayment still exists, and still be applied to other payments. So the steps we're going through here are pretty much the only methods that are going to fix this. And then in giant letters, I've got use the transaction bank dates. So what does that mean about transaction and bank dates? If we have to make a correction to a payment, actually, let's stay in the slides for one more. The first thing we're going to ask is the posted payment, what is its deposit status? Was it deposited? Meaning we did an undeposited fund first and then deposited it. Did we receive it to bank as the account type? Or is it currently sitting as an undeposited fund? So this is like one of those screens here that we might print when I send the link out to this presentation. If we received it as an undeposited fund and then we created a deposit, these are the steps we'll follow. Find the deposit, reverse the deposit, using the transaction or bank date that we've used in the deposit. It has to match our bank records. And then we can reverse the posted payment. If we've received it as a bank type, which is mostly used for our drawdown payments, direct to the bank, we're right to cash, we can just go find the posted payment and reverse that payment using the bank or transaction date. If we posted the payment as to undeposited funds and we haven't created a deposit yet, we don't have to reverse the deposit because it doesn't exist. We can go and reverse the posted payment. Ultimately, we end up in the same spot for any of these, reversing the posted payment. Almost daily, I'll get a call asking, how do I reverse a payment? It's pretty much the same 3 steps, no matter how we slice it or dice it in Intacct. Whether you're in insurance, TUC, childcare, we're going to posted payments and we're clicking reverse. And we have to use the transaction or bank date. What that means is, let's find a deposit. So I'm going to accounts receivable and deposits. If I'm going to reverse this payment, this payment says April 6th. When I click reverse, we have to enter a date. We can't use today's date just because we're doing it today. We want it to match the actual date of the deposit so that when our accountant is reconciling our bank information later, we're going to have a bank statement that says a deposit happened on April 6th for $2,395. We want to make sure we use the reverse date on the same day so that when she's verifying that bank account activity, we still don't have a deposit recorded on April 6th. We want to make sure that we've done that correctly. So we know April 6th is going to be the date we use in the deposit. Why are we reversing this deposit? So it might be just something simple as correcting a payment where something was entered wrong. So instead of something, we might have check number or amount or whatever the thing is. We applied it to the wrong customer. Whatever it is we're doing, we're going to include that in our memo. You know why you're reversing it. Other people aren't going to know why. So make sure it's clear to everyone else, not to you. And then we hit submit. That deposit is now reversed. When we reverse that deposit, the 2 payments associated with that deposit go back to undeposited funds. So if it was this check here, 23978, maybe this was a typo. It was supposed to be 1217, not 1712. Now that we reverse the deposit, we can go to a posted payments. And then hopefully we've created our own custom view for this that added that check number. There's our payment. I think they use their entity level. They can now reverse the payment, but we don't want to do that until we reverse the deposit first. Now we reverse this payment. It's given the error because I didn't actually reverse the deposit. It's given us a warning that we shouldn't ignore. But when we're at the reverse payment, we're going to use the same date we recorded the payment to. We want all of this to tie out to our general ledger records. We want it all to tie out to our bank records. Notice there's no edit button on this line. I can't go into the transaction. There's no edit button. I can't just go and fix the amount. I can't go and fix the check number or the date or who the customer was that it was applied to. So it's to protect the integrity of cash activity. That's why we're going to end up having to reverse the posted payment. So we can then reverse that. Then we'd go through the steps of receiving the payment again. If it was part of a deposit, then we know when we receive the payment, we're going to receive it as an undeposited fund. And then we can go back to our deposit screen and build our deposit again for that same bank date. And the reason for the correction doesn't matter. The same steps are going to be taken no matter what the reason is. The check was returned by the bank. We're reversing a deposit, reversing posted payment. If it was an expired check, reversing the posted payment, we're done. We're paid the wrong invoice or wrong customer, reverse the payment, receive it again, make the deposit again. Correct amount, wrong date, wrong check, doesn't matter the reason, same steps to reverse the payment. And that's right here on this slide. We can print that. We end up at the same step, no matter what the reason is. Only difference being is the deposit status. There's one of them that gives us an extra step to take. If we reverse a deposit because the payment was returned to us or it was the wrong date, whatever the reason is, once we reverse the deposit and make whatever correction we have to that payment may no longer be associated to that deposit date. This deposit, so if that check we were looking at no longer was going to be included on April 6th, we've reversed the deposit. We still have to recreate the deposit to include this check number still. So once we're done, we make sure we come back and then undo the reversal by adding our deposit and then including that payment we sent back to undeposited funds. That's still okay. If we're trying to make a correction, recently I got an email from Solid Waste. How do we make this correction? We accidentally applied a payment to one customer when it should have been applied to another customer, and it was done 2 years ago. We can't reverse payments from the system where the bank account's already been reconciled. That check's been deposited and verified. That amount is verified as going to the bank. So once we've reconciled the bank account, we're not going to be able to reverse a deposit or reverse a posted payment. The reversing a deposit or a posted payment are things that can occur pretty much with transactions within the last month or two. Not any further back than that. Unless we're still reconciling the bank account from a little bit further back because we're trying to correct all these issues. So if it's for an old payment And we've realized, and probably the only circumstance is going to be this, where we've applied a payment to Rosebud Construction instead of Rosebud Office Supplies, say. We're going to have to issue adjustments to these people's accounts. If the customer that should have gotten the credit didn't, you can issue a credit adjustment and apply it to those invoices that were supposed to be paid. And then you would just use today's date time frame, and then use whatever documentation and description that's going to clearly lay that out for other people who are going to see that. You know what you're doing today. No one else is knowing why you've done that tomorrow, okay? Customer account that got the payment when they weren't supposed to. We can issue a debit adjustment saying they now owe this the dollar amount that's due. In that case, it was like $22,000. So it's going to be a debit adjustment for $22,000, and we're going to include all of those invoices that were paid mistakenly as part of our supporting documentation, along with the description of why that happened and how you were able to determine that that happened 2 years ago or however long ago. Correcting advances is the exact same steps as correcting payments, as posted payments. We're going to determine its deposit status and then go from there. Part of a deposit, reverse the deposit, reverse the payment. Posted directly to the bank, reverse the payment. Sitting in undeposited funds and not deposited yet, reverse the payment. We're going to get to the same 3 steps no matter what. Thank you all for your time. I'll send out a link to this recording and to this document when the recording becomes available. Enjoy the rest of your day.